It is March 1st and over the next couple of months I have quite a lot of buddy reads racked up, which is unusual for me. So I thought I would compile them all into one vlog and I'll talk you through my thoughts. This month I'm going to be picking up The Isle in the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri, and I'm going to be reading this with B at Just Be Weird. I'm also going to be picking up Until the World Falls Down by Lynde, and I'm going to be reading this one with Amanda at Amanda's Booktopia. Then in April, I'm going to be reading When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I'm going to be reading this with Drew at Drew's Ambitious Reading. Finally, I'm going to be picking up His Face the Sun by Michelle Jabès Corpora, and I'm going to be reading this one with Clint at Readers. I am also going to be reading Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. This is the first book in her Saints of Steel series. I'll be reading this with Faye at Books and Chocoholic and the rest of her Discord book club server, but for me this one's a reread, so I'm probably not going to be talking about it. I just really wanted an excuse to show off this cover again. Oh boy. Until the World Falls Down was my pick for reading with Amanda, and it hasn't gone brilliantly. This is pitched as a adult Beauty and the Beast meets Labyrinth retelling, and I cannot express to you how excited I was for a Labyrinth retelling. I love Beauty and the Beast as well. I'd probably say it's my favourite fairy tale to retell, but there are so many of them around that is definitely not a selling point, but Labyrinth was the selling point here. I honestly didn't even read what this book was about when I bought it. I saw the title, clocked that it was a reference to one of the songs, and I kind of didn't care. I just thought that's fun. When I found out it was a Labyrinth retelling, that was even better. But the fact that this book has been a disappointment is heart-wrenching. It's also beautiful, and I really wanted to keep it, but alas. I got to around page 100 of 520 and I'm making the call to DNF. I spoke to Amanda yesterday and she, at the point we were at then, which I think was more at page 80, had already decided to DNF it. I thought I would give it an extra couple of chapters just because at that moment we were almost on what I thought could be a turning point, and I wanted to make sure that I had given it its full chance, but no, I'm gonna be joining Amanda and DNFing this one. As far as I got, we start the book following Nell, who is, she's needy. She's, I don't want to say desperate, but she's very eager to please. She's a little bit clingy. She thinks her boyfriend is going to propose to her. She meets up with him for coffee, and it turns out that not only is he dumping her, he's letting her know that for over a year he's been cheating on her with her sister. The thing about that scene was, yes, it sets up that our character, how needy she is, how that need for romantic connection that she has, but to make her the character I think the author wants her to be, there's such a hatchet job done on the ex and the sister. And I'm sure they could be horrible people. I'm sure, well, they are horrible people. And in real life, they absolutely could be these horrible. But this just felt like watching panto villains or comic book villains. They were so over the top in their cruelty, in their comments, in just the way it was presented. It felt very performative, as if these characters knew that a reader was watching them and they had to absolutely be as brutal as they could in setting up Nell, telling her what had happened. It didn't feel believable that these people seemed to know that they were the villains, and I feel that if they were written more realistically, most people don't think they're the bad guy, and they would have, even if they were getting to the same point, even if they were making the same confession, I think it would have been framed differently. Moving past that opening chapter, we had the potential for this book to really become something, but from, you know, whatever the start of chapter 2 was, so a few pages in, until honestly, and I counted, about page 90 was one long smut scene. Nell meets a kind of creepy dark shadow daddy at a bar and they go back to his place to hook up, and that is the next 80 pages of the book. And yes, this is a slightly longer book, it's like 520 I said, But that's nearly a fifth of the book on one smut scene. And not to be cruel, and I know everyone has different tastes, but it was quite a cringy smut scene. I feel like if you're going to dedicate that much of the opening of your book, where you're truly trying to hook people, and the extended introduction to your protagonist alongside the actual introduction of your love interest slash villain, the smut scene has to be perfection, and this, it wasn't. So where Amanda DNF was basically the end of that scene, and it was the moment where Enver, our love interest villain, reveals to Nell that he has decided she is going to be staying with him forever so he can be dedicated to her, be obsessed with her. Very much that Jareth monologue at the end of Labyrinth, but I don't know, it just came across as creepy rather than, you know it's wrong, but like, it's David Bowie. And so I did give it an extra couple of chapters to see what her going into the labyrinth was like, to see if the book could turn it around. And it did a little. The idea of the labyrinth was interesting, but I just didn't like the way it was written. We were introduced to almost vignettes of new characters, little moments that didn't feel like they had any logic tying them together. One moment a statue is drowning Nell in the pool and she's rescued by someone. One minute a gardener shows up and he's giving her a dress that Enver has told him to pass along. Then she's moved on to another scene to meet someone else, and it just didn't feel coherent. For me, I just thought it was a wasted opportunity. I wanted something dark and obsessive, and to me what an adult labyrinth would be. Instead I just got a husk of a love interest. He's heartless, he's controlling, and it just didn't feel like it had the nuance that I wanted to feel like that's the kind of character that you could turn round, or that you could think, yeah, but. Instead I visibly recoiled every time he spoke with his "my little lover," and I didn't find it charming. And I think to really be sold on this book, you would have to find that love interest charming, because that's such a big part of it. I'm really hoping that I'm going to have better luck with The Isle in the Silver Sea, which I'm going to be reading with B this month. My second buddy read for March is The Isle in the Silver Sea. I'm reading this with B from Just Be Weird. This one actually is giving me vibes of a book that I read just last month, I want to say. The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. In that we had two characters kind of tied together through time that kept going back and interacting with each other again and again. This has something similar but without the time travel. In this world there are certain stories, certain folktales that have a real magical connection to the land itself, and so the characters from those folktales are reincarnated to live out their story again and again and again. And incarnates are revered, they're looked after, they're respected, because if something happens to them, if the story doesn't play out, part of the land that is directly connected to their story just kind of disappears out of existence. So they're really, really crucial to the state of the realm, I guess. In this one, we are specifically following a tale that is really upper tier, the Knight and the Witch. In that story, we have an evil witch. The knight is sent to kill her. She curses him to fall in love with her. He does. And then she falls in love with him and he has to kill her, and they both die. It's very tragic. But in this, we are following their latest incarnations. And Simran is the reincarnation of the witch. And I think Simran feels more like the protagonist, though we do get point of views from both characters. Simran is an immigrant that came over from the elsewhere with her parents. She is unusual because there's some idea that the incarnates can only be children that were born in Britain. So she's a bit of an oddity there. She doesn't want to be this incarnation. She doesn't want to be the witch from this story, because why would you? She's gonna get killed. So she's been keeping it under wraps, and the story kind of kicks off when someone finds out. At the same time, she, by happenstance, bumps into Vina, and the two of them are now, I think they're gonna be looking to uncover the mystery of this witch hunter that's been out to get Simran. He seems not to want her to relive her story. He wants to kill her now. So they're obviously gonna have to investigate why that's happening. This is the most muddled summary of this book. I am currently at only page 100, and it's just that there's a lot going on. But I have to say it's really, really compelling. It's really immersive. I'm totally hooked. I did think that this might be a little above my head. The pacing might be a bit slow, it might be a bit convoluted, but so far it seems really good. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they want to continue their stories, they want to continue these incarnations of themselves, or whether there is some way they're going to try and get around that. I have no real expectations at the moment, but I am really enjoying it. My buddy read with B was definitely a success in the sense of the buddy read. I really enjoyed talking to her about the book, and I think this was exactly the type of book that a buddy read is most beneficial for. I did want to read it, I did enjoy it overall, but I don't know that I would have finished the book if I'd been left to my own devices. I think we had a conversation maybe around the 2/3 mark going into the beginning of part 2. I had such a strange experience. I enjoyed it while I was reading it. When I was actually, the pages were in front of me, I was invested in the story and the characters. But the second I put it down, I then seemed to forget that it existed, and I never really felt excited or interested or remembered to pick it back up. And then once I kind of forced myself over that hump and I picked it back up and read a couple of pages, I would be back in, but it never called to me. And I think that's part of the problem. There was a lot of potential in it, and I don't know if that's the problem. Some parts of, especially that second part, felt muddied. They felt like they were a little bit frantic. There was a lot going on. And B did suggest that there were some elements that maybe would have worked better as a duology. You could have fleshed out some of the elements and added some things in that we were both interested in seeing. Personally, I would have loved to have seen more human incarnates. I stick with my theory, I stick with my thought that the elven aspect, the elves that are brought in, and the elven incarnate that's brought in could have just been a human. There was no need to add in this other element of world building where the Fae are relevant to our characters. I would have loved to have seen more human incarnates, to have seen them around. I would have loved to have heard more about the tales they came from as well. It would have been nice to maybe echo what we get with the prologue. That gives us the original, kind of as it is written, tale of the Knight and the Witch. It would have been good to get to see some of the other tales mentioned in their original format in the book, and then maybe even had sections where we see a specific incarnate, or maybe even use Simran and Vinya more in different incarnations through time to show that repetition. We do get little snippets, tiny mentions of Vinya and Simran's past incarnations, but we really do only get the previous one, and then I think maybe number 4 from the beginning. We don't see a lot of them. This one felt like it grabbed a lot of elements and then underused them, fumbled them. It just didn't feel like they were important enough. The weight wasn't enough. I felt like we just threw in some things and then moved on, personally. That idea of just things that weren't fleshed out enough, that didn't feel developed enough, comes back to the finale of the book that I don't want to give too much away on, but the book itself, we obviously are building to this finale. It's incredibly important to our protagonists. They go through a lot to get there, but also for the world of the book, a lot has happened to get us to this point, outside even of our protagonists. And then the kind of solution to that just felt very underwhelming. And I didn't think it was actiony enough, I didn't think it was dramatic enough, and I didn't think it packed an emotional punch to even counterbalance that lack of actual action. The characters were enjoyable. I liked Simran, I liked Vinya, I liked some of our background characters. There is a relationship in here, I would say it's the secondary romance, that I was actually far more interested in. There was such an interesting shift between part 1-ish and part 2, where how those characters got from the relationship that they had between them the dynamic they had between them at that point, to get to the level of trust and the relationship and the life that they'd created by the second one just seemed like a far more interesting journey. You could have given me a novella that was that interim time, or a book that was that interim time, and I would have eaten that up. So again, the idea that maybe this could have been a duology and it would have worked better overall is holding water. Those were my buddy reads for March, and going into April, I have another two kind of big world building fantasies. When the Moon Hatched is, I think, the more intimidating of the two. It is a chunky book, but I've also heard a lot of people say that it's very slow paced. The world building is quite intricate. I think it could be hit or miss. Hopefully I will have some updates for you about it soon. I've reached the point that Drew and I decided to make our "are we going to continue this book" check-in point, and I am so pleasantly surprised. I feel like I should confess that this book I really wasn't sure about, because partly because of reviews. This has a lot of, not mixed, but polarized reviews. There's a lot of 5 stars, people absolutely love it, but there's also a lot of really low ratings where people say it's too slow, the world building is maybe a bit convoluted and ill-explained, it doesn't gauge them the way they want. But more so than that, I bought the wrong book. I saw this in Waterstones, I thought it was gorgeous, I vaguely recognised the title, but this isn't the book I thought I was buying. Once I bought it, I knew what book it was, and when I agreed to buddy read it with Drew, I knew what I was reading, that's fine. But in the shop, I'd actually meant to buy When the Tides Held the Moon, not When the Moon Hatched. So I probably wouldn't have picked this one up off my own back if I hadn't got them muddled in the shop. Which is why when Drew offered to buddy read it with me, I thought it was a really good choice, because I could quite easily have seen myself just leaving this on my shelf forever and been like, oh, it's not the book I meant to read. And the reviews are mixed, and it's a romantasy, and the type of romantasy that I've found very hit or miss. I could have seen it sitting on my shelf forever, but this has motivated me to read it, and I'm really, really glad it has, because I'm currently at chapter 32, which sounds absolutely like you should be at the end of the book, but the chapters are really small, and I think we're about here. So this is the bit I've read, there still is to go. I'm having such a good time with it. The opening chapters were quite slow. There wasn't much plot, and there was quite a lot of indirect world building, and then we have an event that really kicks it off. And from there, it's kind of been non-stop, and I'm really invested. I love the main character. I've been pronouncing her name as Rave. Love how morally grey and complex and unlikable and guarded and distrustful she is. I've really, really enjoyed her character. The world is a bit hinky world building wise. I'm still have lots of aspects that I don't think I fully understand, but some of those I feel like are being shrouded from me to give a sense of mystery. I would hope to get some revelations or resolutions on by the time I get to the end of the book, but I am content to go with the flow until we get there. And I think that's been the success of this for me, is being willing just to go with the story that Parker is telling and not think too far ahead. The book comes with pages and pages and pages of glossaries and pronunciation guides and world building details and maps. It would have been really easy to get bogged down in that, to feel like I had to understand all of that before I could start the book, and I think if I had tried to, I would have ended up setting it aside. So instead I just discarded all of it, skipped everything, and that, I mean, there might be some of those answers that I'm looking for in that material, but if it was a choice between being confused but getting going and understanding it perfectly but putting the book down, I think I've erred on the right side. And I'm not in love with it right now, but I can definitely see the potential for me to end up in a 5-star by the time we get to the end. So I'm really, really, really glad that I chose to go with it, and I think the buddy read has been the right choice. I'm working on some of my other Aurelian books at the moment, and I am the one holding up the buddy read I have with Clint. I really need to get to His Face is the Sun ASAP. So I'm probably going to take a break from this now and jump over and try and read a decent amount of that one to make sure that I am wanting to continue with both of them, and then I will be able to update you a little bit more The second half hit a little bit of a bumpier patch for me. Partly it was maybe because I let the book sit, although I didn't start the next buddy read, but I let this sit. I got on with some of my other Aurelian reads, and so when I went back to it, I don't know whether I had lost a little bit of steam, but I did struggle to find it as interesting and as compelling as I had found the first section. So though it's a big book, I think maybe it needs momentum to get you through it. Once I got settled though, I was hooked, and I really enjoyed especially the back end of this. The last quarter, say, was fantastic. There were so many revelations. Things I'd been wondering about were either confirmed or twisted round. There were lots of action-packed moments, lots of well-placed reveals that felt like they had been seeded through the book and were earned. I don't think anything came as a massive twist surprise, but I think that's what I like when you have a book that has these kind of mysteries, that you should get the twist just before the author reveals it and then have that confirmed to you. In my opinion, that means the mystery or the intrigue has been well foreshadowed. I don't like when something just pulls the rug out from under you and looking back you can't see the signs for it. If you're gonna make me go, oh my god, I couldn't believe that, then I need to be able to look back or reread and be able to see the steps that got us there. Having got to the end, I am now very invested in picking up the next one, to the point where I'm also gonna keep this edition because it's pretty. I don't know if I would bother getting this kind of special edition next time, because obviously I didn't really intend to buy the special edition this time, but I would definitely pick it up to read it, whether that's an ebook or a library copy. And I'm probably going to keep this one until at least then, because I really do like the maps and having the family tree, the glossary, all of that physically rather than in an ebook copy. And I think by the time, I know the second book is out like this month, but by the time I get to it, I think having the glossary, the character list, and all of that really easily at hand is probably something I will want and need for me to enjoy the second book. I am really glad that I did pick it up. I think it's going to be a really memorable series by the time it's finished. The last buddy read that I'm going to be covering in this vlog is His Face the Sun by Michelle Jabès Corpora. I'm reading this one with Clint from Reads Readers. This one was a complete cover buy. I knew nothing about it when I went in, but it does have an ancient Egypt theme to it, so it really caught my eye. I am just about page 80 of just under 500, and we have had one POV chapter from each of our 4 leads. I really liked that we got quite meaty chapters for each of the protagonists. It feels like we got a really nice setup, a really good sense of who they all are individually before we really kick off and start combining these characters. We have Sita, the Pharaoh's daughter, who's looking to make her way from the nursery, from her childhood, and become more of a woman and take part in the festival that is coming up. Then we have Neff, who is having strange dreams. At the festival of Bast, she pleads with the goddess to let her remember the dreams. When the goddess grants this wish, she starts to cry tears of blood and she finds herself taken away from her parents to become a priestess. Faye is a poor farmer's daughter, making ends meet by taking part in the fighting pits. At the very end of her chapter, the tax collectors arrive with new ridiculous demands. One of her friends has been talking about rebellion and secret meetings, and I think Ray is probably going to fill that role. Then lastly, we meet Kareem, who is a tomb robber, and in a chapter that ends with a lot of tension, a lot of mystery, he has found something dangerous and dark and surprising in the tomb he's exploring. I'm really enjoying Corpora's writing. It's painting a really nice, vivid picture of the Egyptian setting that feels really immersive. I think this is going to be a really good one. At the moment, I think I am the most hooked by Neff, the potential priestess, but I am very intrigued to see how particularly Kareem comes into the other three's storyline. I have finished with His Face is the Sun, and If it's not a 5-star, then it's definitely an upper 4. I'm still just dithering on whether I'd say like 4.5 or just go for the 5. For Goodreads and Storygraph, I think we're just going with a 5 for my own personal sense of self. I don't know. This was really, really, really good. Pharaoh is unwell, the country is filled with unrest and famine, and then when the Pharaoh dies, Prince Merriman ascends to the throne, affecting the lives of all 4 of our protagonists. And what I thought that Corpora does really well is that each of our 4 protagonists, by and large, there isn't much interaction or overlap between them. There are a couple of moments where our tomb robber, Kareem, has met all the 3 girls, but none of them have met each other. But he only meets them very briefly. So essentially we do have 4 completely separate storylines. And Corpora has done a really good job that in each of those 4 storylines, they feel completely fleshed out. There feels like there is a real narrative arc happening. They are fully developed in their settings. Each character is really showing us a very different aspect of this world, and each of those settings feels very vivid, very fleshed out, very well described. And each of our characters has a full supporting cast. So the world building in this is just so well done and so rich and so deep. There's so much going on that I was completely immersed in all 4 of the storylines. And you know what multi-POV books can do. Sometimes you feel like pretty early on you latch onto 1 or 2 characters, or you dislike one character and you find yourself looking forward to the POV in a specific character, or you find yourself skimming the POV of a specific character. That never happened in this. Every time we switched POV, I was just like, oh, okay, we're getting back to that. That's really exciting. I was never upset to be going into a new POV. That was always exciting to get back to. It was just really well done. I did particularly like Neff's storyline. I think I said that last time. She's the priestess. She has been lifted from her merchant parents' kind of family and thrust into the temple of Bast as a seer. She does have these genuine visions that obviously all the priests and priestesses are trying to achieve. This is just happening for her. She's very much been chosen by this goddess. We see a couple of prophecies she makes. She's there to give us that, I guess, sense of magic in the world. And I just found her storyline really compelling, seeing her journey from just a young sheltered girl to her initiation to the temple, especially her befriending of Prince Kenna. I love their little adoptive older brother younger sister dynamic. Obviously Neff has been taken from her family. She's been an only child anyway, has grown up without any siblings, and it makes sense that she then latches on to Kenna, who is there. He's a little bit older and he's almost got the opposite problem, that Kenna is the youngest of the 3 triplets that are the royal siblings. We get Sita's POV in this. Merriman is the oldest and he's the one that is ideally ascending to the throne. Kenna's almost the forgotten child. He has chosen to work in the embalmer's office. It probably has a certain amount of prestige to it, but it's a very kind of backroom job compared to Crown Prince. And he has a very scholarly, very reserved aspect that I just really liked. Kenna, of all the characters that we don't get a POV from, is I think my favourite, and I'm a little sad that we don't actually get a POV. I hope that in the next book we're gonna see Kenna come back into the storyline, either through Sita or through Neff again. I hope he's going to come back into the story, and ideally I would love to get some chapters in his POV. Maybe the next book will add some additional POV characters, but I just want to see him again. Sita's story I think was the one that really kicked off the most. I'm always quite interested in, you know, courtly intrigue storylines, and hers is mostly set in the palace. You see the gradual increase in the king's illness. You get a real sense of the politics of the realm as a whole, and I did really like her chapters, especially once we hit, I don't know, maybe the last quarter. Sita's chapters just seem to be really, really important. full of lots of reveals and lots of action and lots of really emotional character beats. It feels like a while since I've read a YA fantasy that was so well developed, so richly fleshed out, and I'm really glad I picked this one up. This was purely a cover buy, and it probably would have sat on my shelf for years. I'm really, really glad that Clint wanting to read the second one pushed me to pick this one up. I don't know if I'm going to read the second one right away. I might wait till it comes out on paperback so that I can have the 2 matching copies, and so that I've got a bit more time to just appreciate that one once it arrives, but I am tempted. Very, very quick editing Louise jumping in here. I did just get a copy of the sequel, She Knows All the Names, on NetGalley. So forget everything I said about self-control. I'm gonna be reading it really soon. So for this vlog, I think it would have been great to have 4 5-star reads, but if you can't have all excellent reads, I think this went in the best order possible. Each book became better than the last, and those final 2 books, the 2 that I read this month, were both really, really excellent. I do think I very slightly preferred His Face is the Sun to When the Moon Hatched, but it's a fine line, and they are 2 very different stories, so for comparison it's maybe not the fairest, but they've both been excellent, and I definitely think this is the high I want to close out the vlog on. This was a particularly buddy read heavy month for me, but I really enjoyed the experience. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing some of my thoughts during this vlog. It's kind of like a buddy read of our own. And if you're interested in seeing other vlogs from me, this kind of chatty style or more recommendations videos, then please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, leave me a comment if you want to talk about the books, or just leave me a sunshine emoji for His Face the Sun if you have nothing else to say. Thank you for watching. I really hope that I'll see you in future videos. Goodbye.